Hello, I'm Josephine Queen from New Haven, Connecticut. Today I'll be reading Violet's Blossoms from the Gravelight Press anthology, EXHUMED. Petals drift into the table, settling on the polished surface. The faint smell of decay, flowers resting in a vase a day too long, the water starting to discolor. A woman's voice screaming, an angry cry, not scared. The vase lying on the floor, water puddling between tiles, flowers strewn, stems broken, a child crying. The bus thumped through a pothole and Jessica woke. The dream licked along the edges of her mind, but the images dissolved quickly, like sherbet in warm water. Soon nothing remained but their aftertaste. Jessica sat up and rubbed her face, unsure if she was exercising the dregs of her nightmare or trying to crawl back into its depths. Memory, Jessica thought, not a dream. Not something her mind had created, but something it had recalled. Rain tapped at the glass. The interior of the bus was hot and stifling. Condensation fogged the windows. The world beyond the glass hovered, suspended in mist. Jessica wiped at the window with her sleeve. A town beckoned. Shadow Hills. Jessica recalled a phone conversation from 3 days earlier when she booked her room and transportation. The charter bus stops at Baskerville, the agent had said. To get to Willow Falls and your hotel, you'll need to take a local bus. Jessica sat up in the seat and unfolded a sheet of paper she'd been carrying. Her own handwriting was difficult to read, but she made out the scrawl enough to see she was close to where she needed to be. Willow Falls was just 1 mile distant from Shadow Hills. Much easier to get off here and walk rather than ride 10 miles to Baskerville and double back. She glanced out the window. The clouds looked heavy, but Jessica relished the thought of walking the mile to Willow Falls after being inert for the past 11 hours. Rain or shine. It would be a relief to clear her mind of the webs of bad memories and half-remembered dreams. The bus driver didn't see it that way. "I can't let you out here, love," he said. A grimace stretched across his aged face. "Shadow Hills isn't a stop. Besides, there's no one here." Jessica followed the driver's gaze. The town looked deserted, as if everyone had scattered as soon as the rain started, like cockroaches fleeing a flashlight beam. "But I'm meeting someone in Willow Hills." Jessica held up a scrap of paper as evidence. "This isn't a stop," the driver said. "I'll drop you at Baskerville and you can get the local from there." Jessica squinted through the rain-streaked windshield. "But you're stopped now," she noted. "And Baskerville is 10 miles in the wrong direction." "Yes, but," he started. "Willow Falls is a mile away," Jessica persisted. "I can walk it from here." "It's raining, love," the driver said, pointing at the darkening sky. "Don't worry, I won't melt." "Listen, love, you don't want to get out in Shadow Hills. Things happen here." "What things?" The driver shook his head. The door of the bus remained closed. "Just bad things," he said, but he sounded tired and aware that he was losing the argument. A few passengers began to look annoyed by the delay. "It's daylight," said Jessica. "What could possibly happen? Can't you just please open the door?" Jessica was already down the steps. She hoisted her well-worn backpack onto her shoulder and turned to the driver. He issued a look, as if Jessica were a bad taste that couldn't be rinsed away. It was the same look her mother had given her on countless occasions. Reluctantly, the driver pulled the lever and the folding doors opened. Jessica stepped out into the rain and watched as the bus slowly pulled away. The main street was lined with storefronts, most of which were boarded up. Weeds grew through the cracks in the pavement. A cloud of failure drenched the town of Shadow Hills. "Perfect," her mother's voice spoke in her head. "You'll fit in well." Jessica felt as if she was being watched. The driver's warning playing with her nerves. She glanced nervously around, looking up and down the main drag, hoping to spot a warm, welcoming coffee shop or general store where she could charge her phone, get directions, grab a latte. Sunday, it seemed, was not the day to conduct business in Shadow Hills. The rain fell heavier now, and Jessica began to feel that departing the bus had been a mistake. She was sure her mum would agree. Her mum's voice, a grating, nasal, high-pitched tone that narrated so many of her nightmares, echoed in Jessica's head. "What did you expect? You're so bloody stupid. You've never made a good decision in your life. Not true, Jessica said softly under her breath. She had made a great decision just 2 days ago when she had finally walked away from her mother's stifling rules. Jessica touched her cheek lightly, still tender from being struck by her mother's hand. For the last time, Jessica whispered, pressing ahead. She walked along the street, trying to stay beneath the ripped and mouldering awnings. A large washed-out cactus stood in the store window directly across from her, doubled over as if deflated. Jessica sighed. She stood shivering beneath the meager shelter, unsure whether to wait for the rain to stop or to risk walking to Willow Falls in the downpour.
Thank you for listening.
A flash of brightness in the grey caused Jessica to look across at the cactus store again. The window was now bursting with colourful flowers. Jessica frowned. The sign above the storefront announced, Violet's Blossoms. She was drenched by the time she reached the door of the shop. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The humidity hit her first, then the scent of the flowers. It was overpowering, but not unpleasant. They're sitting in the backyard. Her mother smiles at her from beneath the wide brim of a sun hat, her face covered in shadow, unreadable. She smells the perfume of the peonies that grow like wildfire. Her mother's wine sits unopened between them on the blanket. Jessica tells herself that when she grows up, she won't drink alcohol. A child's promise to protect her older self. The shop boasted roses, lilies, chrysanthemums, and many flowers Jessica didn't recognize. All was stunning in their vibrancy. Can I help you? A woman, voice like honey, spoke from behind her. Jessica jumped and turned. The woman was young and lovely, sunflower blonde hair tucked messily into a ponytail. Hunter green eyes peered from beneath thick lashes. Oh, I'm sorry to bother you. I was caught in the storm. Do you have an outlet where I can charge my phone? No, the woman smiled. Can I help with anything else? Some flowers for a special person, perhaps? Jessica shook her head. Your mother, maybe? The shopkeeper tilted her head. Jessica noted the fine lines around her mouth. My mother and I aren't. That is, she and I don't really get along, Jessica admitted. Such a shame, the woman said. Mother-daughter relationships can be daunting for sure. The florist turned her back on Jessica and snipped at some errant leaves in a bouquet with a pair of clippers she pulled from the pocket of her apron. Jessica glanced at the outlet next to the cash register. Clearly she doesn't want to help me, she thought as she turned to leave. Do you love your mother? The shopkeeper asked. Her back remained toward Jessica, who blanched at the question. The shop was warm, much warmer than the bus had been. Jessica was suddenly aware of the rivulets of sweat running down the back of her neck. Well, she said, starting toward the door, I should probably be going. Sorry to have wasted your time. Oh, don't leave, the merchant said, and turned suddenly. Jessica stepped back, almost toppling a pile of pots stacked behind her. It's such a nasty, gloomy day out there. At least wait out the rain inside. Jessica wondered how she had mistaken the woman as young. Her hair was streaked with grey and the wrinkles around her mouth were deeply grooved. I'm Violet, the woman said, and offered her hand to Jessica. The skin on her liver-spotted hand felt paper-thin and oddly cold given the texture of the shop. I'm Jessica. Jess for short? Violet asked. No, said Jessica. I prefer Jessica. Right, of course you do. Jessica noted the cynicism in Violet's tone and pursed her lips, the same tone her mother used with her, a mocking, passive-aggressive sound that always precluded a tantrum. Look, I just want to charge my phone, Jessica said. Since I can't do that here, can you at least give me directions to Willow Falls? To where? Violet asked. She was occupied with arranging a flower vase. Jessica didn't notice the petals which were brown at the edges or the leaves that drooped, thirsty and dying from the stems. Willow Falls, Jessica repeated. I've never heard of it, dear. Violet started humming, a whispery tune issuing from her nose. It's the next town over. No, the next town over is Bradbury. It's Willow Falls. I saw it on the map. I once had a daughter, you know, Violet said. She was a tart, too. Jessica pulled her backpack further onto her shoulder. The door seemed a mile away. Violet now stood between her and the fresh air of the steadily darkening morning. Yes, Violet continued, at heart. Daughters are tricky, you know. Slippery things that twist your words and force your demons to the surface. Violet smiled. Brown teeth lined black gums, and not even the hyacinth and lilac could mask the stench of rot that seeped from her. Jessica took another step backward. What's your mother's favorite flower? Violet asked. Her voice was hoarse, like a smoker's rasp. Peonies, Jessica said, trembling. The stench in the shop was now malodorous, but underneath, Jessica picked up the faint hint of her mother's perfume. There was a rustle as leaves and petals dropped to the floor. The smell of decay pushed through the perfume, and Jessica wrinkled her nose. Violet skittered across to Jessica and touched its tip. Funny little wrinkle-nosed chipmunk, she said. Jessica's heart lurched. The hazy light of a spring morning. Jessica's mother lying on the couch, a puddle of red, gleaming in the bottom of a wine glass. Her mother reaching over, touching the tip of Jessica's nose. Be a dear, and pour Mama another glass. Jessica standing frozen in the circle of light that dances on the living room rug, her legs refusing to move, standing in the sliver of time that shimmers between her mother's happy buzzed and angry drunk personas. Well, what are you waiting for? Funny little wrinkle-nosed skunk. The time passing like mercury, the light and mood changing. Pour me a glass of fucking wine, you little shit. Mothers can be tricky. Daughters can be slippery, Violet said in a whispery sing-song voice. Tarts and skunks and little shits. All of them need to be dealt with, put out, snipped off. Violet clipped the rotten heads from a bouquet of roses. They fell to the floor. Violet watched with rheumy eyes wide and her mouth stretched in a humorless smile as they rolled like the heads of small, desiccated animals. Jessica backed toward the door. All around her, petals and leaves fell with an eerie whisper and decomposing into a rancid heap, then dry into a dust that caught on the wind as her hands finally found the knob and she flung open the door. Her last glimpse of Violet was of the old crone collapsing to the floor in a pile of sagging skin and crumbling bones. Oh, God, Jessica whispered, staggering along through the rain, pace quickening with every beat of her heart. The cactus in the window bowed down to Jessica as she ran, a mocking gesture to the daughters who lose their way and the mothers whose fingers they slip through, like sand through a sieve or grave dust to the wind. The 2 o'clock bus thrummed into the center of Shadow Hills. The rain was slowing now, but the doors remained tightly closed. A small hand wiped away the condensation that fogged up the glass of one of the many bus windows. A child's face peered out. Look, Mummy, why is that lady running through the puddles? The little girl, whose name was Rowan, watched as the young woman, backpack half off her shoulder, ran full pelt up the empty street. It was impossible to tell whether the woman was grinning or screaming silently. Rowan's mother pulled her daughter away from the window. Don't stare, darling, it's not polite. But she's not even looking at me, Rowan said. She looks scared, Mummy. Rowan's mother smiled and tapped her, not altogether gently, on the tip of her nose. My funny little wrinkle-nosed squirrel, she said. Do as you're told. Rowan turned back to the window and traced circles in the fog. Around and around her finger went, drawing borders over the disappearing figure of the running woman. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to pick up a copy of EXHUMED at gravelightpress.com. Thank you.